They laughed at her, called her just a waitress, asked her opinion on a $40 billion deal as a joke, expecting her to smile and walk away like she had for 3 years. But then she saw his name, Thomas Crawford, the man who stole her life, the man who took her brilliant career and turned it into ashes, the man who made her disappear. And something inside her snapped. In that moment, standing there in her cheap uniform with coffee stains on her apron, she made a choice. She could stay silent and stay safe, or she could speak 5 words that would either save a billionaire's empire or destroy what was left of her own life. She chose war. What happened next would expose one of the biggest frauds in American history, send a powerful man to prison for 40 years, and prove that the most dangerous person in any room might be the one nobody's paying attention to. This is the story of how a waitress brought down a billion-dollar empire. And I promise you, by the end of this, you'll never underestimate anyone again. Welcome to Radiant Story and Tales. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you are watching from. Let me tell you about a woman named Sarah. When I first want to tell you about her, she was 30 years old, and her whole world had become very, very small. She worked as a waitress at a fancy restaurant in downtown Boston called the Golden Hall. This wasn't just any restaurant, you understand. This was the kind of place where powerful people came to eat $100 steaks and drink wine that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Sarah was good at her job, really good. She moved between the tables quietly, never making mistakes, never causing problems. She wanted to be invisible. She wanted everyone to forget she existed. And for 3 long years, that's exactly what happened. But here's what nobody knew. Sarah wasn't always a waitress. No, her story was much more complicated than that, much more painful. 3 years before, Sarah had a different life. Back then, she was Sarah Mitchell, and she was one of the brightest financial minds in the entire country. She worked for a powerful investment company, and her boss was a man named Thomas Crawford. Thomas wasn't just her boss. He was her mentor, her teacher, the person who showed her everything about the world of money and business. Sarah had even created something special for him, a computer program so smart, so perfect, that it made Thomas his first $1 billion. She trusted him completely. She thought he was like family. But then Sarah discovered something terrible. Thomas wasn't just making money the honest way. He was stealing. Tiny amounts from thousands of transactions, all hidden in secret bank accounts overseas. It was brilliant. It was illegal. And Sarah could see everything because she had built the system that made it possible. She was 26 years old, and she believed in doing the right thing. She thought Thomas would thank her for finding the problem. She thought he would fix it. She believed in him. Instead, Thomas destroyed her. He took all that stolen money and put it in bank accounts with her name on them. He created fake emails that looked like she had written them. He built an entire mountain of lies, piece by piece, until it looked like Sarah was a criminal and he was the innocent victim. When the federal agents came, they came for her, not for him. Who were they going to believe? A 26-year-old woman, or Thomas Crawford, the man whose face was on every business magazine in America? The man who had dinner with senators and movie stars? Sarah ran. She had to. She emptied her small savings account, changed her name to Sarah Bennett, using her grandmother's name, and disappeared into the crowds of Boston. The brilliant Analyst became a waitress. The woman who once moved billions of dollars with her decisions now counted her tips in single-dollar bills and quarters. For 3 years, she lived in the shadows. She watched Thomas get richer and more famous. She saw his face on television, on magazine covers. Everyone called him a genius. And every single night, she went home to her tiny apartment and wondered if she would spend the rest of her life hiding from something she didn't do. That all changed on one cold November evening. The restaurant's most important table, table 12 in the corner, was occupied by a man named William Ashford. The restaurant was actually named after his family. William was one of the richest men in America. His investment company was so powerful that when William made a decision, the entire stock market felt it. That night, William was celebrating. He was loud, confident, surrounded by his son James and two business partners who laughed at everything William said. They were talking about a massive business deal. William was about to buy a technology company for $40 billion. $40 billion. That's more money than most people can even imagine. Sarah was carrying 4 heavy plates of food when she walked past their table. Her arms ached, but she had done this thousands of times before. She could carry the weight without even thinking about it. Then James, William's son, noticed her. He was drunk and bored, and he thought of something that would make everyone laugh. "Dad," James said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "You always say you like to get opinions from regular people. Why don't you ask her?" He pointed at Sarah like she was a piece of furniture, not a person. "Ask her what she thinks about your big deal. I bet she has some really smart ideas from serving soup." The whole table erupted in laughter. William leaned back in his chair with a mean smile on his face. He looked at her name tag. "Sarah," he said, making sure everyone in the nearby tables could hear him, "you bring coffee and clean up after people. What's your opinion on $40 billion business deals?" Time seemed to stop. Sarah stood there, her back aching, for plates balanced on her left arm. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear in her ears. She was supposed to say, "I'm sorry, sir. I don't know anything about that." She was supposed to smile and walk away and let them have their laugh. But then they said the name. Thomas Crawford. One of the men mentioned that Thomas had been interested in buying the same company. Something inside Sarah broke. Or maybe something that had been broken for 3 years finally healed. She turned around slowly. She didn't look at William. She looked at the business papers sticking out of his briefcase on the chair beside him. "You're being set up," she said quietly. The laughter died instantly. The entire restaurant seemed to go silent. William sat up straight. The cruel smile disappeared from his face. "What did you just say?" His voice was dangerous now, not playful anymore. Sarah met his eyes. For 3 years, she had kept her head down. She had hidden who she really was. But these men had said Thomas's name. They had reminded her of who she used to be. Her voice was steady now, strong. "I said you're being set up. You think you're buying this company's amazing technology, but you're really buying their debts. Thomas Crawford isn't your competitor. He's your enemy. And he's using this deal to destroy you." A fork clattered onto a plate. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. William Ashford stared at the waitress who had just changed his entire world with 5 simple words. William Ashford hadn't become a billionaire by being stupid. He knew how to sense danger. But he also wasn't the kind of man who took advice from waitresses. "Keep talking," he said. His voice had changed completely. The joking was gone. This was the voice of a man who suddenly understood he might be in serious trouble. Sarah carefully placed the plates on the table. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. After 3 years of hiding, of being afraid, she felt something she hadn't felt in so long. She felt like herself again. "This technology company looks valuable on paper," she said. "But all their real value has been stripped away and hidden inside another company called Phoenix Holdings. Thomas has been working with their chief financial officer for months. They've been lying about what the company is really worth." William's face went pale. "Phoenix Holdings," he whispered. "That's buried deep in the paperwork. Page 300-something. Nobody pays attention to it. Thomas is counting on that," Sarah continued. "His plan is simple. He lets you complete the purchase. Then 6 weeks later, Phoenix Holdings declares bankruptcy. When it does, all those hidden debts will come crashing down on you. The company will be worthless, but you'll be locked in. You'll lose $20 billion overnight. Your company's credit rating will be destroyed. And while you're bleeding and desperate, Thomas will launch a takeover. He doesn't want the technology company. He wants your entire company, and he wants to buy it for almost nothing while you're weak." The silence at the table was complete. James's mouth was hanging open. The 2 business partners looked terrified. William reached into his pocket with a shaking hand. He pulled out a credit card and threw it on the table. "James, pay the bill. All of it. You too." He pointed at his business partners. "Get out. You're fired. Get out of my sight." "William, what's happening?" one of them stammered. Get out! William roared. The three men scrambled away from the table like frightened animals. William turned back to Sarah. His eyes were cold and sharp. You have 10 seconds to decide, he said. My car is outside. You're coming with me. If you refuse, I will have this restaurant shut down by tomorrow morning, and I will find you anyway. Who are you? Sarah took off her apron and dropped on the table. After 3 years of hiding, she was done running. My name is Sarah Mitchell, she said. And Thomas Crawford didn't just compete with me. He's the man who destroyed my entire life. The ride in William's car was silent. Sarah stared out the window at the rain-covered streets of Boston, watching the lights blur past. She was wearing her cheap waitress uniform, sitting in a car that cost more than most houses. They arrived at Ashford Tower, a massive building of glass and steel that seemed to touch the clouds. Security guards stared at Sarah's uniform, but said nothing when they saw William's expression. They took a private elevator to the top floor. William's office was enormous, with windows that showed the entire city spread out below like a blanket of stars. Lock the floor, William said to the empty room. A quiet click told them they were alone. He turned to face her. Sarah Mitchell, the analyst who supposedly stole $900 million from Stratton Financial. The woman who vanished before she could be arrested. You're a fugitive. I was framed, Sarah said simply. There was no emotion in her voice anymore. She had said these words in her head 1,000,000 times, but nobody had ever listened. Everyone says they were framed. William shot back. Give me one reason to believe you. I don't care if you believe me, Sarah said, walking to the enormous window. You asked who I am. I told you. You asked how I know about your deal. I'm telling you. Thomas Crawford was my mentor. I built the computer program that made him rich. Then I discovered he was using it to steal money. When I confronted him, he framed me for his crimes. He had lawyers. He had fake evidence. He had everything. I was nobody. He was Thomas Crawford. So I ran. She turned to face William, and her eyes were blazing now. For 3 years, I've been hiding. I've gone from analyzing billion-dollar investments to serving soup. I've watched Thomas get more powerful, more celebrated, while I counted nickels and dimes and tips. And then tonight at your table, your son said his name. You talked about the deal, and I saw the papers in your briefcase. Sarah's voice grew stronger. I know how Thomas thinks. I know how he operates because I taught him half of what he knows. And when I looked at those papers, I saw my own work. He's using the same trick he used to frame me, the same shell company structure, the same hidden transfers. He's so arrogant, he thinks nobody else can see it. But I can see it. I built this kind of system. I know exactly how it works. William walked to a cabinet and poured 2 glasses of water. He handed one to Sarah. If what you're saying is true, he said slowly, you just saved my company. But you also just confessed to being a wanted fugitive. Why would you risk exposing yourself? Sarah took a sip of water. Her hand was steady. Because Thomas used my work, my signature, my code. And because I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of being afraid. He took everything from me. My career, my reputation, my life. And I just watched him about to do the same thing to you, using my own playbook. She set down the glass. You asked who I am. I'm the woman Thomas Crawford fears most. I'm the only person alive who can prove what he really is. William studied this woman in her cheap uniform, who spoke with the confidence of a general. All right, Sarah Mitchell. You want back in the game? You're in. But my own company believes in this deal. Some of my own people might be working for Thomas. You'll be fighting not just him, but some of my own employees. Sarah smiled for the first time. It was a cold smile, a warrior's smile. Give me a computer, she said. Give me 72 hours. I'll prove everything. The 75th floor of Ashford Tower was called the data center. This was where dozens of brilliant analysts worked day and night, staring at computer screens, making sense of numbers that would make most people's heads spin. When William Ashford stepped out of the elevator at 2 in the morning with a woman in a waitress uniform, every person in the room stopped working and stared. Listen up. William's voice commanded instant silence. This is Sarah Mitchell. She's a special consultant. She has my complete authority. Give her whatever she needs. Full access to all the files on this technology deal. Everything. A severe-looking woman in an expensive suit stood up. Her name was Rebecca Foster, and she was William's head of risk management. She looked at Sarah like someone had just dragged garbage into her pristine office. A special consultant? Rebecca's voice was filled with contempt. William, with all respect, who is this person? She's the person who's going to tell us if we're about to walk off a cliff, William said. Get her access now. Rebecca, her face tight with anger, led Sarah to an empty computer station. Here, we'll set up your security clearance. It might take a while. I don't need a new login, Sarah said, sitting down. Her fingers were already flying across the keyboard. Just give me guest access. I can work with that. Guest access won't get you into the encrypted files, Rebecca said with a smug smile. She thought she had one. 30 seconds later, Sarah was looking at files that should have been impossible to access. Rebecca's face went white. The other analysts who were watching took a step back, shocked. Lock the station, Sarah said, not looking up. Nobody sees my screen. Get me coffee. Black. And I need the original paper copies of all the financial statements. The actual physical documents. I want to see the real paper. For the next 6 hours, Sarah was a storm of motion. She wasn't just reading the financial data. She was living inside it. She cross-referenced international transactions. She pulled up satellite images of the company's factories in Asia and discovered they were abandoned buildings. The other analysts tried to work, but they kept stealing glances at this strange woman who moved through their complex systems like she had built them herself. William watched from his office above the floor. He could see Rebecca and another man, David Peterson, his chief financial officer, huddled in the corner, whispering and shooting angry looks at Sarah. Sarah was deep in the numbers, tracing the flow of money. Everything she suspected was true. The fake valuations, the hidden debts, the shell company. But there was one final piece missing. The smoking gun that would prove Thomas's entire scheme. And it was protected by encryption she had never seen before. It's not here, she whispered to herself, frustration mounting. The sun was starting to rise outside the windows, painting the sky in shades of gray and gold. Rebecca approached Sarah's desk, her smile confident and cruel. Having trouble, consultant? Maybe you've hit a wall. Some of us have been working on this for months. We're very confident in our analysis. You're confident because you're looking at exactly what Thomas wants you to see, Sarah said quietly. Then she stopped. She leaned back and rubbed her tired eyes. The encryption wasn't just a password. It needed a specific person in a specific location to unlock the final file. Sarah looked at Rebecca's smug face. Then she looked at David across the room, watching them nervously. William had mentioned that David was the one who had approved the audit reports. A terrible, brilliant idea formed in Sarah's mind. You're right, Rebecca, Sarah said suddenly. I am at a dead end. I can't find the final proof. Rebecca's smile grew wider. I'm sorry to hear that. I'll let William know you tried your best. But you know what's interesting? Sarah continued casually. While I was searching, I found something completely unrelated. Just a curiosity, really. There are wire transfers in Ashford's internal system. Same amount every month for 6 months, from something called Meridian Digital. Rebecca's smile froze on her face. These transfers go to a private account, Sarah continued, pretending to study her screen. And the bank routing number looks familiar. It's the same bank you use for your paycheck. Rebecca stopped breathing. So I looked up who owns Meridian Digital, Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. It's hidden behind several proxy companies. But at the end of that chain is Thomas Crawford. The color drained from Rebecca's face. You're the head of risk management. Rebecca, you're the one person who could have buried the red flags about Phoenix Holdings. You're the person who approved the questionable audits. And you've been getting paid very well by Thomas to do exactly that. Sarah stood up. But here's the thing. You're not just getting paid. You're the key. The biometric lock on that encrypted file needs you to unlock it. You're Thomas's inside agent. This is insane, Rebecca whispered, but her voice was shaking. I'm calling security. Go ahead, Sarah said calmly. But while I was digging, I moved every cent from that Meridian account into an escrow account controlled by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Your insurance policy is gone, Rebecca. You have one chance to save yourself. Unlock that file. Show me the truth. Rebecca looked around the room. Every analyst was staring at her now. David looked like he might faint. William was standing at his office door, his face like stone. Rebecca was trapped. Her betrayal was exposed for everyone to see. With shaking hands, she walked to her own computer. She placed her thumb on a scanner and typed a long password. On Sarah's screen, a new folder appeared. Project Trojan. Sarah opened it, and her heart sank. It was worse than she thought. Not just debt, not just fraud. Fake patents, false research, criminal conspiracy. This wasn't just going to hurt William. This was going to destroy him. She was about to open the final file when a voice echoed across the silent floor. Well, Sarah Mitchell. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She turned around slowly. Standing by the elevator, wearing a $1,000 suit and a cruel smile, was Thomas Crawford. I thought you were serving coffee, he said. This is quite the career change. The 75th floor felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out of it. Sarah hadn't seen Thomas Crawford in 3 years. 3 years of hiding, of fear, of shame. And now here he was, standing 20 feet away, smiling at her like this was all a wonderful joke. Thomas looked exactly the same. Perfectly styled hair, going gray at the temples. Expensive suit that probably cost more than Sarah made in 6 months at the restaurant. That confident smile that had once made her feel safe, but now made her stomach turn. William, Thomas said, walking into the room like he owned it. I came by for our pre-celebration meeting. We're signing the papers on Friday, after all. But imagine my surprise when I heard you brought in my old assistant. He looked at Sarah. You look terrible, by the way. Waitressing doesn't suit you. William stepped forward, putting himself between Thomas and Sarah. Crawford, you're not welcome here. Get out. Oh, I think I am welcome, Thomas said smoothly. He gestured toward David and Rebecca. David. Rebecca, tell William what you told me last night. Tell him this deal is solid. Tell him that his waitress is feeding him lies. David, seeing a chance to save himself, nodded quickly. He's right, William. This woman is a known criminal. She's trying to sabotage the biggest deal in this company's history. Rebecca and I have run the numbers a dozen times. They're perfect. You're a liar, David, William growled. Am I? Thomas interrupted. Or is she? Think about it, William. Her word against your chief financial officer, your head of risk management, and the combined findings of the top auditing firms in the world. Who do you think your board will believe? Who will the government believe? He had a point, a terrifying point. Sarah was a fugitive. Her word meant nothing against the entire financial establishment. Sarah had been silent, her hands gripping the edge of her desk. She looked at Thomas, the man who had been like a father to her, the man who had destroyed her life. You're right, Thomas, Sarah said quietly. Her voice was shaking. The evidence is circumstantial. The Meridian account, the biometric lock, it's just noise. It's not real proof. William looked at her, shocked and disappointed. He had gambled everything on her, and she was giving up. Thomas's smile was blinding. He thought he had won. See, William, even your expert admits it. Now let's be reasonable. Fire her, and let's go sign the papers that will make us both very, very rich. William's face showed bitter disappointment. He had bet on Sarah, and she had folded. I only have one thing left, Sarah said, her voice cracking. She reached under the desk and pulled out her old, worn leather bag, the one she had carried to the restaurant every day for 3 years. When I ran from my apartment, she said, the federal agents took my computers, my phones, everything. But they missed one thing. She unzipped a side pocket and pulled out a small black external hard drive. Thomas's smile started to fade, his eyes fixed on that drive. This is my backup, Sarah said. From 3 years ago, before you framed me. She looked up, and suddenly the tears were gone. Her voice was steady now. Strong. You see, Thomas, I was a very good analyst. I backed up everything, including the original computer program I built for you. And I backed up the original scheme you created, the one you used to frame me. She held up the drive. You're right that the new evidence is weak, but you made one fatal, arrogant mistake. You're not running a new scheme. You're running the exact same scheme again. She plugged the drive into her computer. On her screen, she split the display into two columns. On the left, the fraud code from 3 years ago. On the right, the current technology deal fraud code. They were identical, line for line, number for number. It's not my word against yours anymore, Thomas, Sarah said. It's your own signature. Twice. It's a confession written in code. And this time, it has your name on it, not mine. Thomas Crawford's face went white. He stared at the screen, at the two perfect columns of matching evidence, and he knew his life was over. William, who had been watching this entire performance with growing amazement, finally spoke. His voice was cold and final. Rebecca, David, you're fired. Security will escort you out. The police will be waiting for you in the lobby. William, please. David started, but William held up his hand. Get them out of my sight. As the guards dragged Rebecca and David away, their protests echoing in the stairwell, William turned to Thomas. You came into my home, William said quietly. You tried to poison me with my own money, and you used the one person who could stop you as a joke. He picked up his phone. I'm calling the Securities and Exchange Commission right now. The technology deal is dead, and you're finished. No, Thomas choked out. He was a cornered animal now, all his charm gone. In one last desperate move, he lunged not at William, but at Sarah. You, he screamed. You destroyed me. You ruined everything. He never reached her. William's bodyguard, a massive man who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward and stopped Thomas with one powerful arm. Thomas hit the floor hard, gasping as security pinned him down. Sarah watched a man who had haunted her nightmares for 3 years lying on the floor, broken and defeated. The war was over. After 3 years of hiding, 3 years of fear, 3 years of being invisible, she had won. But as the adrenaline faded and security guards dragged Thomas away, Sarah started shaking. She had won, but she was terrified. Could she really come back to this world? The world that had chewed her up and destroyed her? William walked over to her. He looked at this woman in her waitress uniform who had just saved his entire empire. The job is yours, Sarah, he said softly. Head of Strategy, Ashford Investments. Build your own team. Name your price. And I'll fund your lawsuit. We'll use this evidence. We'll get your name back. We'll get everything back. Sarah looked at his outstretched hand. Then she looked at the trading floor, the screens, the lights, the world that had once been her home. Her hand was shaking as she reached out and took his. The trial was fast. The newspapers called it The Revenge of the Waitress. And Sarah hated that headline. It made her sound small, like she was defined by the worst moment of her life. She wasn't a waitress who got revenge. She was a brilliant analyst who had set a perfect trap and won. Thomas Crawford, with no money and no friends left, faced mountains of evidence. The two sets of identical code, laid side by side, were impossible to deny. He pleaded guilty to everything. The judge gave him 40 years in federal prison. For a man his age, it was a life sentence. Sarah walked out of that courthouse, ignoring the camera flashes and shouted questions. Her face was calm. The war was finally over. 6 months passed. The noise died down. Sarah Mitchell was no longer a waitress. She was now the head of strategy at Ashford Investments, one of the most powerful positions in American finance. She had a corner office on the top floor. She wore designer suits. She had a salary that made her old self dizzy with disbelief. But the victory was not a celebration. It was a battlefield. Sarah worked 100-hour weeks. She didn't just join Williams' company. She rebuilt it from the ground up. She found all the corruption that David and Rebecca had hidden. She created new security systems, new ways of checking for fraud. She designed a computer program that could see in the shadows, that could spot the kind of schemes Thomas had used. William gave her complete freedom, and the company, after the shock of the failed deal, became stronger and more profitable than ever. Sarah Mitchell was back. She had a new office, a new wardrobe, and a new reputation as the sharpest mind on Wall Street. But she didn't trust anyone. She checked everything twice, 3 times. She ate lunch alone at her desk. She was respected. She was feared. But she was isolated. The betrayal had left a scar that wouldn't heal. Then 8 months after Thomas's arrest, the attacks began. It started small. A shipment of goods that Ashford had invested in got lost, costing $50 million. A major business deal suddenly fell apart when private details leaked to the press. "It's him," Sarah said in a board meeting. "It's Thomas. He's in prison, but he's still fighting. He's using his old connections, calling in favors. He's trying to hurt us." The attacks grew worse. A computer trading program started targeting Ashford's investments, driving up prices, costing them money. It was death by 1,000 cuts. The company was bleeding hundreds of millions a week. "It's my program," Sarah said, staring at the code on her screen. "The one I built years ago. He's turned it into a weapon. He's using it to hunt us." "Can you stop it?" William asked. The boardroom was silent. The company was dying. Sarah studied the attack patterns. She saw the aggression, the intelligence. She saw Thomas's signature all over it. He was still arrogant. He still thought he was smarter than her. "I'm not going to stop it," Sarah said. A cold smile spread across her face. "I'm going to use it to destroy him completely." For 2 weeks, Ashford's trading floor became a war room. The attacks were relentless. The computer program shadowed their every move, costing them money with every trade. The board was panicking. They were losing. But Sarah wasn't panicking. She was teaching the program. For 2 weeks, she let it win. She fed it small, predictable trades. She made it think Ashford was scared, stupid, retreating. "You're just watching us die," one executive shouted at her in a 5 a.m. emergency meeting. Sarah didn't even look up from her screen. "I'm not watching," she said quietly. "I'm setting a trap." Later, in William's office, she explained her plan. "We're going to lay out bait," she said. "We're going to make it look like we're desperately selling our biggest investment, our stake in Oracle Technologies, for $2 billion. We'll make it look like a panic, like we're trying to cover our losses." He'll attack, William realized. He'll short the stock, betting the price will collapse. "He'll do more than that," Sarah said. "He'll bet everything he has left, every favor he can call in. He'll try to kill us. But we won't actually be selling. We'll be buying. And when we announce a major new partnership with Oracle, the stock price will explode upward. And Thomas, with his massive short position, will be destroyed completely." The trap was set. The rumors were carefully leaked. The first small sale was executed, and they watched. "He's taking the bait," an analyst whispered. On the screens, they could see Thomas's program building a massive short position, betting billions that Oracle stock would crash. For 48 hours, the tension was unbearable. Thomas kept adding to his short position, convinced he was about to deliver the killing blow. "He's at maximum leverage," Sarah's lead analyst reported. "If the stock goes up even 10%, he's wiped out." The final day of trading arrived. 3:45 p.m., 15 minutes, until the market closed. "Now," Sarah said. "Hit it." At 3:46, a press release hit every news wire in the world. Oracle announces revolutionary partnership with Ashford Investments. Ashford to increase stake by $2 billion. The stock didn't just go up. It launched like a rocket. In prison, Thomas's screens would have turned from green to red. A short squeeze. He had borrowed stock to sell, betting the price would drop. Now he had to buy it back. But the price was skyrocketing. The higher it went, the more desperate his buying became, which pushed the price even higher. In 5 minutes, every cent Thomas Crawford had ever hidden, every asset connected to his name, was vaporized. At 4 p.m., the closing bell rang. The trap had worked perfectly. Sarah closed her laptop. "It's done," she said quietly. A month later, Sarah stood alone on the private rooftop of Ashford Tower. It was late at night, and the city spread out below her like a map of stars. She held a paper cup of black coffee from a regular coffee shop, a habit from her waitressing days that she refused to give up. The elevator dinged, and William stepped out, carrying expensive champagne in crystal glasses. "A toast," he said, pouring 2 glasses. "This is for victories that actually matter." Sarah looked at the fancy champagne, then at her simple coffee cup. She didn't reach for the glass. "I'm not really a champagne person, William." He paused and smiled. "You know what? Me neither." He set both glasses down on the ledge, untouched. He leaned against the railing beside her. "Just a partner, not a boss. The board approved your new risk division. Your bonus is, well, let's just say it's substantial." Sarah nodded, sipping her coffee. "Good. We'll need it. I still see gaps in the Singapore expansion." William laughed. "Always working. We just toppled a titan. Sarah, we rewrote your life. Tell me, how does it feel?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, looking at the city lights. "It feels," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper, "like I can finally breathe, like I've been holding my breath for 3 years, and I just let it out." She turned to him. "When I was Sarah Mitchell the first time, I was the prodigy. I was defined by what I could do. Then I was Sarah Bennett, the victim, the ghost. I was defined by what was done to me." She looked at her reflection in the dark glass. "I don't think I'm either of them anymore. Those were roles I was forced to play." "Who are you then?" William asked. Sarah took a slow sip of coffee. "I'm the woman who learned that the small details matter most. I'm the woman who checks everything twice. I'm the woman who survived." She smiled. A real, genuine smile. "And the next time you want my financial advice, Mr. Ashford, it's going to cost you a lot more than a steak dinner." William laughed. "I'm counting on it, Miss Mitchell." Sarah looked out at Boston. 3 years ago, she had served the city. Now she understood it. She didn't just work in the financial world anymore. She had mastered it. They had all looked at her, but never seen her. They thought a name tag and a uniform could hide brilliance. They thought shame and fear could bury talent. They were wrong. Sarah Mitchell didn't just get her name back. She built a new one from the ashes of the fire that tried to burn her. She proved that intelligence cannot be hidden by circumstances, and that integrity is worth more than any amount of money. William had asked for her opinion as a joke. He found an ally who saved his empire. They thought she was just a waitress. They forgot that the woman serving coffee might be the smartest person in the room, and that was their biggest mistake.